My name is Peter Villaver. I'm a senior crime and intelligence analyst here in San Diego County, in California. Just a little bit of background about myself. I think Antonia gave a brief introduction. I currently work at the DA's office. I have assignments in the administration part of the organization. Also, I still have functions in the Bureau of Investigation. So the Bureau of Investigation is kind of like the investigative arm of the DA's office. Um, with the Bureau, I am considered as one of the in-house resource for cell phone obtained data or analyzing records related to that. I work with DDAs of different levels and different levels of experiences and different case types. So from family protection, DV related incidents to gang related incidents to financial crimes type of cases. And in addition to that, given that my prior employer is San Diego Police Department, I still work with local law enforcement agencies on their active cases for consults and technical investigative assistance. So, and that I provide technical assistance on their ongoing investigation before it even gets to the DA's office for review or issuing. Background in San Diego PD, I was assigned to centralized investigation as an analyst. Homicide, robbery, gangs were the primary divisions, but most of my training in using cell phone records come from the fugitive team. And that was a unique experience for me because in addition to analyzing the records, when we catch the person that we're looking for, it kind of validates the analyses and the methodology. And briefly too, prior to working with law enforcement, I was a transportation systems analyst, totally different domain, where I was involved in new technologies testing and traffic analyses. Just a background of San Diego County. We are in the southwest corner of the country in California. The region is about 3.4, has about 3.4 million residents. We have 9 local law enforcement agencies, and being a border town bordering Mexico, Baja California, there's a lot of federal law enforcement presence. In addition to that, we have a large military presence. The U.S. Navy has multiple aircraft carriers and all sorts of toys in this part of the country. The office size of the DA's office here, we have approximately 320 attorneys, 120 investigators, and about 1,000 employees in total. So this is a snapshot of generally what I'm going to be talking about. So most of the participants here are analysts or prosecutors that have experience in using cell phone technology or cell phone obtained data in their cases or investigations. But I am offering a different approach to that. So it's not more of how to use it, but more of some recommendations for us to use it in our investigations, such as its limitations and kind of some approaches so we can present it accurately particularly in court proceedings. So it's not intended as a full training, and some portions are intentionally omitted because they came from previous cases. So moving on to section 1. So the first one is spotting and mitigating anomalies in call detail records. So many of us have reviewed call detail records as analysts, and sometimes you would have that rogue transaction that all of a sudden it doesn't really make any sense for a phone to be using that cell site. And we have experienced that on a case that we worked on in 2017 here in San Diego. So in 2017, as part of a murder investigation, cell phone records were obtained in an attempt to identify historical communications and locations of the defendant. So pretty straightforward call detail records, attempting to who the defendant communicated with around the time of the incident, leading to the incident, and after. So that's pretty straightforward. And also attempting to locate the device historically. A little plot twist, my involvement was in 2017, but the homicide actually occurred 6 years earlier in 2011. So different technology, different um, records management or records outputs. But the detectives were able to obtain it back in 2011. So detectives obtained the records from the provider through a search warrant, and the provider was AT&T, and AT&T um, was able to provide the records. So when we evaluate these records and when we receive these records from AT&T, because they are the owner of these records, we kind of have like a high expectation that these records that they provided are true and accurate. So moving forward, the next slide is just a standard cell site mapping. So this is in the college area, La Mesa neighborhood of this city of San Diego or county of San Diego. So about 10 miles northeast of downtown San Diego. So during the trial, we just presented activated cell sites from voice and text. So at 1:11 a.m., a cell site was activated just in the northwest of La Mesa, east of Red Circle 1, which is the incident location. About 40 minutes later, an incident occurred at 1:53 a.m., 6900 Alvarado Road in the city of La Mesa. And then at 1:57 a.m., a cell site was activated northwest of the incident location, facing east, another cell site facing north, and another cell site facing west. At 1:58, another cell site was activated directly west of the incident location off of Interstate 8, and then at 2:05 a.m. further south where Blue Circle B is located. So that material was actually presented during the preliminary examination, the prelim hearing, and the defendants were bound over. However, in preparation for trial, Sophia Roach, which we'll be presenting later, was the DA. And in preparation for trial, we had to evaluate and re-review the data just to make sure everything was correct. I've always been bothered by the cell site activation that we saw earlier, northwest of the incident location. They're pertinent in terms of time because they occurred right after the shooting. From local knowledge, I know it's difficult. I'm pretty familiar with the Allied Gardens neighborhood of the city of San Diego, and it's all residential surface street with stop signs and stoplights everywhere. So in terms of just visualizing, can a person logically drive from Red Circle 1 through Allied Gardens and then come down? At the beginning, it just appeared that it was based on elevation. However, applying local knowledge of the road configurations in Allied Gardens make it quote unquote odd. So evaluating further on the latitude and longitude of the cell site, on the image on the top right, number 2, shows that the latitude and longitude is on just south of a quarry. So there's some quarry activities happening in this part of the city. So that made it even more weird or odd. Also, given that the north side of the quarry is elevated. So that becomes another red flag pertaining particularly to the transaction that activated the cell site facing north. And using open source imagery and terrain data, so image number 3 on the bottom right, shows the elevation model of this quarry. So from a 2-dimensional map, I was able to analyze somewhat of a 3D imagery of the the area of where the latitude and longitude is, and even further identified that it's actually on a slope, so which makes it even more odd. So investigating the anomaly. So the first step, just like any other triage per se, is to obtain cell towers list. So back up a little bit, I used the latitude and longitude that was embedded in the call detail records. So as we are all familiar, AT&T records has all the transaction details and the latitude and longitude or geolocations of the cell site embedded in the same file. So that file was inputted to a mapping software, and everything embedded in that record was used to map it. So fast forward, obtaining cell site and cell site list, just evaluating the latitude and longitude, and also evaluating the additional location attributes for that cell site. So here's another flag, because this latitude and longitude and the cell towers list address are two different locations. So 5500 Campanile Drive is actually about 2.5 miles south of the latitude and longitude. Step number 2, so we had to bring up this issue to the court, and the judge said, well, if you're going to use the cell site information, I want you guys to visit every single one just to make sure that they exist. So an investigator and I visited 30 unique cell sites, and this is the cell site of question. So it was on a slope, just what the terrain data showed, and it is difficult to get to that slope. There's no accessibility, and it was in a swamp-like environment, not typical of a cell site structure. The last thing that we also did is, in the city of San Diego, all cell phone companies have to register their equipment. So we did check city of San Diego for permits, cell site permits at that location. And for the past 12 years or 15 years around that time, there hasn't been any towers installed there. So the disposition is the disposition was we shifted the location from the embedded latitude and longitude into the 5500 Campanile based on the multiple reviews and site visits that we did. So in remapping the diagrams, 1:11 a.m., just east of the incident. And then this shows the corrected location. So the blue is the corrected, and the white is what it was previously corrected or previously marked. And it shows a mapping of consistent with the westbound movement on Interstate 8. So some of the tools that I used, or I even still use now, is a street view. So it is recommended that if you cannot visit the cell site, at least go to street view of Google Maps or Bing Maps and try to identify if there's actually a structure at the location, particularly for the pertinent transactions around your incident. So open source terrain data is very useful. This is actually a slide that I used in a court in one of the hearings. So from a 2-dimensional map up top, I was able to show an elevation profile of part of San Diego County, which on the 2D aerial map looks flat, but if you pull the elevation profile, there's actually a valley between point A and point B. So section takeaway, just briefly. So when analyzing records, anomalies may occur, and it will be up to the reviewer to spot these issues. In my training and experience, about 99.5% of the embedded locations are correct. However, it would be up to the reviewer to spot these quote unquote anomalies. I love automated tools. That some of the tools that was brought up earlier are tools that we use here in San Diego. such as Cellhawk, Nighthawk. However, automated tools typically miss these anomalies. So what goes in is what comes out. Cell towers list, even if the geolocations are embedded, just download it, check it out just to make sure that the information are correct. Typically, we get it from the provider as part of the warrant returns, NDCAC, and also previous cases. Use of local knowledge and land use and geography. So you are familiar with your jurisdiction. So if you think if you probably know where the terrain differences are, and urban suburban makeup. So use that to conduct your analyses. And there's a lot of free mapping tools that, especially the ones that I mentioned earlier, that can help us better analyze the latitude and longitude. So moving on to multiple geolocations, mapping sources of the same target. I'm going to be focusing primarily on Google locations and CDRs. So a lot of the cases now, we're just not reviewing cell phone records, but we're also reviewing Google locations and other location sources that can identify the historical location of a target. Just a background, I pulled this directly from this website, policies.google.com, that kind of just gives a snapshot of how Google and why Google identifies locations or captures locations for their subscribers. So how does Google know my location? Location info can come from real-time signals, such as from different inputs, such as GPS, sensors, network signals, and Wi-Fi signals. So these are documented and publicly available. And how is location information used? So essentially why they do it. They said that locations are captured to improve ads and products, advertisements, and generally customer experience. So some points to remember when evaluating Google locations. So just like call detail records, we are tracking the device used by an account, and it's be up to you to connect the person to that account. A Google account, and this is really important because this became an issue on one of our cases. So a Google account can be logged into multiple devices. So think about your Google account can be logged into your home phone, could be logged into your tablets or computers. And Google is able to distinguish which device is which. However, when you're analyzing locations, you need to make sure that you are tracking the correct device. Just a snapshot of different location history precisions. So as I mentioned earlier, locations can be identified using how the device relationship with a cell phone tower, how the device connected with Wi-Fi access or had a relationship with a Wi-Fi access, and also through GPS technology. In San Diego, in previous cases, we used location history to provide one more precise location of the device, or to augment information that call detail records may not able to offer because the information or the data points are missing. And from experience, Google location history are more prevalent on Android devices. So this is an example of a cell site mapping and Google location mapping of the same target. So the top pink element is the TDOA data. So it was a T-Mobile device. And then the Google location is represented by the blue circle on the center of the map. And then the call out table on the left side are the pertinent information for that Google location history record. So using multiple sources, we can have a better precision of identifying the location of the device. However, the question becomes, how do we know that the T-Mobile record and the Google location are tracking the same device?
You have 5 minutes left.
So these are just some of the records that we can use to make sure that um, to validate some of the information captured by the records. First, the account information and access log devices. They list out the make and model of the device, and particularly the phone number that's associated on like the multi-factor or text message verification. So if any of these match your T-Mobile records, such as IMEI, target number, subscriber information, then it's reasonable to say that you are tracking the same target. So as I mentioned, locations are becoming more prevalent for Google, and it will help you out with more identifying historical location of the device. Lastly, specialized location. We are all aware of TDOA, particularly in T-Mobile. So TDOA gives us the activated cell site, location of devices, the estimated location of the device, or latitude and longitude, and other characteristics that in addition to cell sites. So why is it important? And a typical call detail records, you may have one or just one, two, or three cell site activations. So in this particular case, there were three. However, in using TDOA data, we are able to get a better picture of the location of the device and travel on a specific time frame. So using TDOA, we were able to connect five different locations, including two of the incidents. Briefly, I want to talk about the evaluation of how the precision data, like how accurate they are from a test that we did on a specific case. On this particular case, we were able to obtain a test phone and evaluated how precise they are based on control points from a GPS tracker that we did. So this video shows our test phone, which is the red that's moving, and how it interacted with T-Mobile network. It started in the rural area of San Diego to suburban area. So using automated tools and automated process, we were able to link data points. So essentially, again, evaluating the TDOA estimated points and distances and how comparing it with GPS tracker control points. Because we're analysts, we like diagrams and tables. This particular result on this test shows high variability between the GPS control point and what TDOA was estimating the location to be. So it's varied, the offset varied from less than 0.05 miles to 2 miles. And even with a high level confidence value from TDOA measurements, some of the measurements that we have were about more 0.1 miles to 0.25 miles from the actual location of the device. In comparison, in reviewing just the estimated distance component of TDOA, there's less variability. Generally, it's about 0.1 miles or less, which is the documented offsetting of TDOA estimated distance. This is section takeaway. Specialized location are becoming more common source of location of a device because less people are making phone calls. So traditional call detail records tend to show us fewer location information.
You have 1 minute left.
Each of the TDOA attributes, as I mentioned on the test, showed variability of precision compared to the other. And I highly caution when offering opinions of like identifying the exact location of the device from historical data. The test is still in progress. Further data collection is needed, such as other geography from highly urbanized areas, such as downtown LA or Manhattan. And a lot of the tests that we did are from non-stationary movements. So we need to get more data points for that and other markets. So the results specifically from parts of San Diego, and other markets may behave differently. And this is my contact information. If you have any questions or comments about the materials, feel free to hit me up.